The gavel slammed, and the courtroom held its breath. A boy, no older than 12, stood trembling in the aisle, his voice slicing through the judge's ruling like a blade through silk. "You're wrong," he shouted, his words echoing off the oak-paneled walls, freezing every soul in the room. Malik Johnson wasn't supposed to be here. He was just a kid from the south side of Chicago, where the streets whispered lessons no school could teach. His mother, Aisha, sat in the defendant's chair, her wrists cuffed, her eyes hollow from weeks of fighting a system that seemed rigged from the start. She was accused of stealing from her employer, a wealthy white businessman named Richard Hale, who claimed she'd taken $10,000 from his company's safe. The evidence was flimsy, grainy security video, a coerced witness statement, but in this courtroom, it was enough to paint Aisha as guilty before the trial even began. Malik, sitting in the back row, had watched it all unravel, the prosecutor's smug grin, the jury's averted gazes, the judge's impatience. He'd heard the whispers in the gallery, the ones that called his mother thief and worse, words laced with venom that had nothing to do with the crime. The judge, a stern man named Harold Grayson, leaned forward, his glasses glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Young man, you are out of order," he barked, slamming the gavel again. But Malik didn't flinch. His small frame shook with fury, his fists balled at his sides. "You don't know the truth," he yelled, his voice cracking but fierce. "You're all blind." The courtroom erupted. The bailiff lunged toward Malik, but Aisha's lawyer, a wiry man named Daniel Carter, shot up, waving his arms. "Your Honor, please. Let the boy speak." The crowd murmured, some shouting for Malik to be removed, others leaning forward, caught in the raw electricity of the moment. Aisha's eyes locked on her son, a mix of terror and pride flashing across her face. She knew Malik was stubborn, but this was reckless. Beautifully, dangerously reckless. Judge Grayson's face reddened. "This is a courtroom, not a circus," he snapped. "One more outburst, and I'll have you removed, young man." Malik took a step closer, his sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. "You're gonna lock up my mom for something she didn't do," he said, his voice lower now, but no less piercing. "You don't even care about the truth. You just see her skin and think you know her story." A gasp rippled through the room. The accusation hung heavy, unspoken but understood by everyone present. Race wasn't supposed to be part of this trial, but it was the undercurrent dragging Aisha toward a guilty verdict. The jury shifted uncomfortably, some staring at their laps, others glaring at Malik as if he'd just spat in their faces. Richard Hale, seated near the front, smirked faintly, his tailored suit a stark contrast to Aisha's faded blouse. He was the picture of privilege, untouchable, his word worth more than hers in this room. Carter, the lawyer, seized the moment. "Your Honor, I request a brief recess to speak with my client and her son. This could be relevant to the case." His voice was steady, but his hands trembled as he gathered his papers. He'd been fighting an uphill battle from the start, knowing the odds were stacked against Aisha. Malik's outburst was a wildcard, dangerous, but maybe, just maybe, a chance to turn the tide. Grayson hesitated, his eyes narrowing at Malik. The boy stared back, unyielding, his chest heaving. Finally, the judge sighed. 10 minutes, he muttered. "But this better be good, counselor." The courtroom buzzed as the bailiff escorted Malik and Carter to a side room, Aisha trailing behind, her cuffs clinking softly. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Aisha grabbed Malik's shoulders, her voice a fierce whisper. "What are you doing, baby? You can't just." "I had to, Ma," Malik interrupted, his eyes wet but determined. "They're lying about you. I know the truth." Carter leaned in, his voice urgent. "Malik, if you've got something to say, you need to tell me now. This could change everything or it could make things worse." Malik swallowed hard, glancing at his mother. He'd been carrying this secret for weeks, ever since he overheard a conversation he wasn't supposed to hear. It was a risk to speak, but watching his mother's life unravel in that courtroom had pushed him past fear. "Mr. Hale's lying," he said finally. "I heard him talking to his assistant. He set Ma up." Aisha's breath caught. Carter's eyes widened. "You heard this? When? Where?" he pressed, his pen hovering over a legal pad. 2 weeks ago, Malik said. "I was at the community center, helping clean up after the youth program. Mr. Hale was there, meeting with some guy in a suit. They thought no one was around. He said he needed to get rid of Aisha, because she was asking too many questions about the company's books. Said he'd make it look like she stole the money." Aisha's hands flew to her mouth. She'd worked for Hale's company for 5 years, managing accounts, keeping things in order. She'd noticed discrepancies, numbers that didn't add up, payments to vendors that didn't exist. She'd asked Hale about it, thinking it was a mistake. He'd brushed her off, but the next week, the police were at her door, accusing her of theft. Carter's mind raced. "This is big, Malik. But we need proof. Did anyone else hear this? Did you record it?" Malik shook his head. "No, but I know what I heard. And there's a camera at the community center. It might have caught them." Carter nodded, scribbling furiously. Okay. We'll request the footage. But Malik, you need to testify. You need to tell the court exactly what you just told me. It's going to be tough. He'll try to tear you apart." "I don't care," Malik said, his voice steady now. "I'm not letting them take my mom." Aisha pulled him into a fierce hug, tears streaming down her face. "You're so brave, baby," she whispered. "But you shouldn't have to do this." The recess ended, and the courtroom reconvened. Carter stood, his voice ringing with newfound confidence. "Your Honor, I move to introduce new testimony from a witness who has critical information about the case." Grayson's eyebrows shot up. "This is highly irregular, Counselor. Who is this witness?" Carter gestured to Malik, who stood tall despite the weight of every eye in the room. "Malik Johnson, the defendant's son." The gallery erupted again, voices clashing in a mix of outrage and intrigue. Hale's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of unease. Grayson banged his gavel, demanding order. "I'll allow it," he said grudgingly. "But this better not be a stunt." Malik took the stand, his small frame dwarfed by the towering witness box. He swore the oath, his voice clear despite the tremor in his hands. Carter approached, his questions gentle but precise. "Malik, tell the court what you heard on the evening of September 12th at the South Side Community Center." Malik recounted the conversation, his words steady but laced with emotion. He described Hale's voice, the way he'd laughed about framing Aisha, the casual cruelty of it all. The courtroom was silent, every word landing like a stone. The jury leaned forward, some scribbling notes, others staring at Hale, whose face had gone ashen. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Laura Bennett, stood for cross-examination. She didn't hold back. "So, you're telling us you just happened to overhear this conversation?" she asked, her tone dripping with skepticism. "A 12-year-old boy, eavesdropping on a private meeting? How convenient." "I wasn't eavesdropping," Malik shot back. "I was cleaning. They didn't see me. That's not my fault." Bennett pressed harder, questioning his memory, his motives, even implying he was lying to protect his mother. Malik's jaw tightened, but he didn't waver. "I know what I heard," he said. "And I know my mom's innocent." The courtroom was a powder keg, every glance and whisper charged with tension. Aisha watched her son, her heart swelling with pride but aching with fear. She knew the cost of this moment, not just for her, but for Malik. He was a child, forced to carry the weight of a truth no one else had dared to speak. Carter requested a review of the community center's security footage, and Grayson, after a heated debate, agreed to a continuance. The court adjourned for the day, but the air buzzed with anticipation. Outside, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing as Malik and Aisha left the courthouse, Carter shielding them from the chaos. The story was spreading, a spark igniting conversations about justice, race, and the courage of a boy who refused to stay silent. That night, Malik couldn't sleep. He sat on the couch in their small apartment, Aisha beside him, her hand resting on his. "You were so brave today," she said softly. "But I'm scared for you, baby. This isn't over." "I know, Ma," Malik said, staring at the floor. "But I couldn't just sit there. Not when they're trying to take you away." Aisha pulled him close, her voice breaking. "You're my whole world, Malik. Whatever happens, we're in this together." The next day, the footage arrived. It was grainy, the audio faint, but there it was, Hale's voice, smug and clear, plotting to frame Aisha. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as the video played, Hale's words damning him in front of the jury. Bennett's face fell, her case crumbling. Hale's lawyer stammered, trying to spin the evidence, but the truth was undeniable. Grayson's gavel fell, dismissing the charges against Aisha. The courtroom exploded. Some cheered, others shouted in protest, but Aisha only had eyes for Malik. She ran to him, wrapping him in her arms, tears streaming down both their faces. The jury watched, some wiping their own eyes, others nodding in quiet respect. But the victory wasn't clean. Outside, the world was divided. Some called Malik a hero, others a liar. The case sparked protests, editorials, and heated debates about systemic bias, about how a black woman could be so easily condemned, and how a child had to risk everything to prove her innocence. Hale faced charges of his own, but the scars he'd left on Aisha and Malik's lives wouldn't fade easily. As they walked home that evening, Malik looked up at his mother. "Did I do the right thing, Ma?" he asked, his voice small. Aisha stopped, kneeling to meet his eyes. "You did more than the right thing, baby. You showed them what truth looks like. And you showed me what courage is." The stars above Chicago glimmered faintly, a quiet reminder that some battles, though won, leave wounds that linger. But in that moment, Malik felt something, a spark of hope, a belief that his voice, small as it was, could change the world. The days following the trial were a whirlwind. Aisha and Malik returned to their modest apartment on the south side, but the world outside felt different, louder, sharper, like a storm that hadn't yet settled. The story of Malik's outburst and the damning security footage had spread beyond Chicago, splashed across headlines and social media feeds. News outlets called it the trial that shook the city, and Malik, barely 12, was suddenly a symbol hero to some, troublemaker to others. Aisha, free but battered by the ordeal, struggled to shield her son from the spotlight while grappling with her own wounds. The system had nearly crushed her, and though justice had prevailed, the cost was etched into every line on her face. Malik felt the weight too. At school, kids whispered as he passed, some offering fist bumps, others throwing slurs they'd picked up from angry adults. His teacher, Miss Carter, a kind woman with a knack for seeing through her students' bravado, pulled him aside one day. "You did something big, Malik," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But big things come with big shadows. You okay?" Malik nodded, but his eyes betrayed him, haunted, searching. He wasn't sure what "okay" even meant anymore. Aisha, meanwhile, faced her own battles. Hale's company, under scrutiny after the trial, fired her, claiming restructuring. It was a flimsy excuse, and she knew it. The $10,000 she'd been accused of stealing was a drop in the bucket compared to the irregularities she'd uncovered in Hale's book's shady deals, unreported profits, payments to shell companies. She'd tried to raise the issue before, but no one had listened. Now, with the trial behind her, she wondered if anyone ever would. Still, she couldn't let it go. Not for herself, but for Malik, who'd risked everything to save her. Carter, their lawyer, didn't let it go either. He'd taken a beating in the press. Some called him opportunistic, others a champion for the underdog. He spent late nights digging into Hale's financial records, chasing leads from the community center footage. "There's more to this," he told Aisha over coffee one morning, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless hours. "Hale didn't just frame you. He's been playing dirty for years. We can take him down for good." Aisha hesitated. The trial had drained her, and the thought of another fight made her chest tighten. But then she thought of Malik's voice in that courtroom, small but unshakable, and she nodded. "Do it," she said. "For all of us." The community, meanwhile, was fracturing. The trial had ripped open old wounds, exposing the raw truth of how race and power intertwined. Protests erupted outside Hale's downtown office, with signs reading, "Justice for Aisha," and "Truth over Lies." But there were counter-protests too, smaller but louder, led by people who believed Hale was the victim, a businessman targeted by a woke mob. Online, the vitriol was worse. X posts flew back and forth, some praising Malik's courage, others calling him a pawn in a liberal agenda. One viral post read, "A kid shouldn't be in a courtroom yelling at a judge. Where's the respect?" Another countered, "That kid exposed a liar. Respect that." The noise was deafening, and Malik, scrolling on his phone late at night, felt it all pressing down on him. One evening, Aisha found him staring at his screen, his face tight with anger. "Baby, put it down," she said, sitting beside him. "Those people don't know you. They don't know us." "They're saying I made it up, Ma," Malik said, his voice low. "They're saying you're still guilty." Aisha took the phone, setting it aside. "Let them talk. We know the truth. You showed them the truth." But the truth, Malik was learning, wasn't enough for everyone. At a community meeting a week later, held at the South Side Community Center, the tension boiled over. The room was packed: activists, neighbors, reporters, even a few of Hale's supporters. Aisha and Malik sat near the front, flanked by Carter, who'd organized the event to discuss systemic bias in the justice system. The moderator, a local pastor named Reverend Ellis, called for unity, but the crowd was restless. A man in a red cap stood up, pointing at Aisha. "She got off because of her kid's stunt," he shouted. "This is about facts, not feelings." A woman across the room shot back, "Facts. The fact is a black woman was framed, and you're mad a kid called it out." Malik's stomach churned as the room descended into chaos. He wanted to stand, to shout again, to make them see. But Aisha's hand on his arm kept him still. "Not here," she whispered. "Not like this." Reverend Ellis banged a fist on the podium. "Enough," he roared. "We're here to talk, not tear each other apart." He turned to Malik, his eyes softening. "Young man, you've got something to say. We're listening." Malik stood, his legs shaky but his voice steady. "I just wanted my mom back," he said. "I didn't want to start a fight. But I heard Mr. Hale. I heard him say he'd frame her because she was getting too close to his secrets. If I didn't speak up, who would've?" The room fell quiet, his words cutting through the noise. A few people nodded, others looked away, uncomfortable with the truth in his voice. Carter took the mic next, laying out his plan to file a civil suit against Hale for defamation and wrongful termination. He'd uncovered more evidence: emails, bank records, a second witness willing to testify about Hale's shady practices. "This isn't just about Aisha," Carter said. "It's about a system that lets people like Hale weaponize their power against people like her." The crowd murmured, some in agreement, others skeptical. Hale's supporters walked out, muttering about false accusations. As the meeting ended, a reporter approached Malik, her camera rolling. "What's next for you?" she asked. Malik glanced at Aisha, who gave him a small nod. "I just want to be a kid again," he said. "But if I have to keep fighting, I will." The clip went viral, shared thousands of times, sparking more debates about justice, courage, and the cost of speaking out. Weeks later, Carter's investigation bore fruit. The civil suit gained traction, and Hale's company crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny and mounting evidence. He settled out of court, paying Aisha a substantial sum enough to cover her legal fees, replace her lost wages, and start a small business. She opened a bookkeeping service, determined to help others navigate the financial traps she'd fallen into. Malik, meanwhile, became a reluctant advocate. Schools invited him to speak, and though he hated the attention, he couldn't say no. "If I can help one person," he told Aisha, "it's worth it." But the victory wasn't without scars. Aisha struggled with anxiety, haunted by the memory of cuffs on her wrists and the fear of losing Malik. Malik, too, carried the weight of the trial. Nightmares woke him, flashes of the courtroom, of Hale's smirk, of the bailiff's hands reaching for him. Aisha enrolled him in counseling, and slowly, he began to process the trauma. They leaned on each other, their bond stronger than ever, a testament to the love that had carried them through. The community remained divided, but glimmers of change emerged. The South Side Community Center launched a youth program to teach kids about their rights, inspired by Malik's courage. Reverend Ellis held weekly forums, urging people to talk, to listen, to find common ground. Some resisted, clinging to old biases, but others began to question the systems they'd taken for granted. Malik's story had planted a seed, one that grew in quiet conversations, in classrooms, in hearts. One evening, as Aisha and Malik sat on their stoop, watching the sunset paint the sky orange, Aisha spoke softly. "You changed the world, baby. You know that?" Malik shrugged, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. "I just wanted you home, Ma. That's all." Aisha smiled, pulling him close. "You did more than that. You showed them what it means to stand up. And you showed me I raised a warrior." The stars emerged, one by one, above the city's skyline. The world wasn't fixed, prejudice lingered, systems creaked under their own weight, and justice remained elusive for too many. But Malik's voice had echoed far beyond that courtroom, a reminder that truth, spoken boldly, could shake even the strongest foundations. What do you think? Where does justice begin, and how do we heal a community torn by its own truths?